So we are going to be learning 3.3, and it's about a couple of things. The lesson's called comparison shopping. And if you understand what comparison shopping is, like you're looking at how they're alike and how they're not alike and how certain things can be done. So here we're going to be solving quadratic equations efficiently and accurately. And we're going to solve systems of quadratic and linear equations. So if you remember what a system is, it's just more than one equation. So you're going to see that. And how can you determine the most efficient strategy for solving any particular quadratic equation? So this is our goal right here, right? So I'm going to be showing you different quadratics, and then I'm going to say, okay, do it this way, and then see which way you like better. Now, some of you already have a preference, and this is just, it's a preference, right? Some of you already like factoring. Some of you like completing the square and then using inverse operations. Some of you like using the quadratic formula because it's like, as long as I know how to plug everything in, the answer is always going to be there. And some of you like graphing because that's one of the ways that you like. Each of these have their benefits and each of these have their drawbacks. Okay. Hopefully what you'll see in a little bit is you'll see the benefits and the drawbacks, and then you'll be able to pick and choose. Now, for me, my favorite way is factoring, unless it can't be factored, and then I jump to one of the others. Okay. So that's our goal for today. You already know how to do everything that we're doing today. There's nothing new that I'm teaching you. We're just like taking all the things that we've talked about for this unit and we're putting them together and we're looking at which way is the most efficient for you. So paper and pencil, probably a good idea here, because I actually need you to write this down and try on your own. Okay. Again, this is like, again, one of those things that you need to do in order to like really learn how to do this. This is not one of those like, oh, you can watch me do it and then you'll completely understand everything. Okay. All right, so let's read a little bit. You should also be thinking about polishing your skills in using each of these methods by checking your work and watching for repeated errors, like mixing up the signs or making mistakes in dividing common factors out of fractions. In other words, don't just work the problems to get them done. Work the problems so that you're getting better. So you're working on a set of skills here, is what they're saying. Okay. So this very first problem, completing the square. If you remember how to complete the square, I'll give you a couple of hints on getting your memory all jogged back together. So the very first thing is I build a square. Okay. And then I have negative 2x's. And then when I build my little 2x's, right, I build one on this side. And where's my other x going to go? You guys all remember this, right? Where's my other x going to go? Yeah, on the bottom. So then, oops, this is a square. I don't want it to be a square. Okay, so there it goes right there. And then I move them a little bit like that. Move them a little bit like that. Okay, so then notice here, there's just going to be one little square right here, right? So I have, how long is this side? How long is this side right here? Come on, y'all. I need you to participate. Let's go. Come on. How long is this side? Yeah, but -1 instead. Very good. Thank you so much for participating. Yes, it's x minus 1. So this is x minus 1. For those of you who are not participating, get participating. Get to participating right now. If you don't choose to participate, you're not making it better for yourself. You're actually making it worse. So I know it feels uncomfortable, but you got to pick your uncomfortable. Are you going to like the results of your next test if you're not like pushing hard? I know it doesn't feel good, but there's tons of things, as like we talked about before, there's tons of things as an adult you're going to have to do that are a little bit uncomfortable and they're out of your comfort zone. So get out of your comfort zone now. Okay. That shows huge signs of maturity. I promise you, you will grow, not just in math. So yeah, it's x minus 1 and x minus 1. So Ms. Johnson likes to do this thing where she writes it out and she says, okay, well, x x minus 1 quantity squared is equal to x squared minus 2x plus 1. Is everybody with me on this part right here? Is everybody good on this part with me? Right? Everybody's okay with this. Okay. Then the problem is you're like, okay, but I don't want it to say x squared minus 2x plus 1. I want it to say this. So I want it to say x squared minus 2x, there it is, minus 15, okay? I want it to say this. So then I'm asking, okay, well, what do I need to do from here to get here? What do I need to do to get from 1 to negative 15? Sorry, from 1 to negative 15. What am I going to have to do? Very good. Someone says, Ms. Johnson, just subtract 16 on both sides. So that's what I do. I subtract 16 over here. I'm going to squeeze in minus 16 in that little tiny spot right there. You guys all see it. So there goes my answer. It's x minus 1 quantity squared minus 16. Okay, so I've basically rewritten this thing so it looks like this, right? So it looks like this. Now it looks like this, right? This is, I just gave it a makeover, right? Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm now actually going to push to solve it. So here's me solving it. I'm going to write x minus 1 quantity squared minus 16 equals to 0. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, like it says up here, I'm going to use inverse operations to solve for 0. So here, what we do is we write SADMAP, right? And we're looking for those things. So I'm going to pause you really quick. I'm going to have you solve this. In case you didn't know how to do this, I'm going to give you an opportunity to try this on your own before we continue on. Okay, so go ahead and solve this. Look for anything that's on the x side, that's subtracting and adding, and then dividing and multiplying, and then exponents in parentheses. Okay, really do it. Okay, so you should have been able to solve this problem using SADMAP, right? So SADMAP tells us what to do first, second, third, and so on. So here I go. I'm looking for any subtraction and addition. Oh, I should use a different color. Hold on a second. I'm looking for any subtraction and addition. On the x side, do you see subtraction and addition? Someone says, yes, I see minus 16 and I see minus 1. Yes, the minus 16 is great. The minus 1 technically is in parentheses, so we don't get to pull him out until we get to the P for parentheses, right? So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Now, you guys don't have to actually write add 16. At this point, some of you are so kind of efficient at it that you can kind of do some of this work in your head. I'm all for that, right? Then what would you do? Well, I would continue on. Okay, so then no, I don't see any division or multiplication. Does anybody see any exponents? Does anybody see any exponents? Yeah, I see a squared. Very good. How do we get rid of the squared? How do we get rid of the squared? How do we get rid of that squared? Anybody remember that? Yeah, by doing a square root. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to do a square root like this. Who remembers what I tell you not to forget? So the squared and the square root, they undo each other, leaving x minus 1 equals to the square root of 16. What can't you forget? What do I tell you every single time you take the square root? You can't forget what? Anybody remember this? Someone said it earlier. Yeah, we don't divide right here because there's nothing being multiplied. That's why I wouldn't divide. No, you plus or minus. Once we do the plus or minus, that's what I wanted you to remember. Don't forget about this plus or minus, okay? This plus or minus is so important. So imagine this plus or minus is in here. You only have one answer. You're supposed to be looking for 2 answers, okay? Okay. And then some of you are like, Ms. Johnson, I know what the square root of 16 is. Good, go ahead and write it if you'd like. And then I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So my answer is x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 16 But since we know the square root is 16, we're going to write it as 2. 1 plus 4, 1 minus 4. So 1 plus 4, I know is 5. 1 minus 4 is -3. So here's my two answers, 5 and -3. 5 and -3. So the plus or minus literally means, like, this is what I want you to think. We're going to play a game. I don't know squared. When I square it, it gives me 25. So I don't know. There's a number that when I square it, it gives me 25. Right? What number is that? And I'll be really plain. What numbers work? Numbers. Right? I'm telling you there's more than one. Right? So most of you figured out, oh, a 5 can go in there, but I say, no, there's another one. So if you tell me 5 on a test, I'd be like, no, you're wrong because you didn't get it all right. Part of being a mathematician is knowing that you found all of the answers. Yes. So now we got to figure out what's the other answer. Very good. Our other answer is -5. So 5 or -5. So do you see the plus or minus here? It's because when I square something, what I put in it could be positive, it'll come out positive. If I put it negative in there, it'll still come out positive. So that's where the plus or minus comes from. Okay, the plus or minus comes from the fact that when you take the square root of something, you have to include both the positive and the negative of that answer. Does that make sense? Very good participation here. This is, I need to see this. Very good. All right. Okay, so our answers are 5 and -3. Anybody know how they would check their answer? Anybody know how they would check their answer? Yes, very good. One easy, not easy, I shouldn't say the word easy. One way that'll definitely benefit you is by plugging in. Okay, very good. So I'm going to plug in here with you. 5 squared is 25. 25 minus 2 times 5, that's -10. So 25 minus 10 is 15, and 15 minus 15 is 0. Yay, Miss Johnson, I got the right answer. Right, and then I would check -3 the same way. -3 squared is 9. Minus 2 times -3 is +6. So 9 plus 6 is 15. 15 minus 15 is 0. That's one way to check it. This is the other way to check it, right? Using this guy. All right, let's plug him in. So we get x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay, where are my answers? Where's my answers? Shoot, they're right there. There. Where do you see 5 and -3? Anybody see 5 and -3? Where are my answers? Yeah, it's your x-intercept, 5 and -3. Okay, does everybody see a couple different ways how to check your answer? Everybody see a couple different ways how to check your answer. Now, some of you are going to be like, Ms. Johnson, I love Desmos. I'm going to check my answer in Desmos. Great. Some of you are not going to bother plugging it into Desmos. You're going to do what some of your buddies said and just plug it in and, you know, kind of calculate in your head, right? Either way, you should get the same answers, right? Okay, so if you're getting a different answer, it's probably because you messed up on a step. The other thing that you want to make sure of too is if you got this correct. And so watch what happens when I plug in parentheses x minus 1. I will check it in a second though. Squared minus 16. What happens when I plug this in? Did you guys all see what happened? What happens when I plug that in? You guys all see it? What happens? Yeah, very good. They're the same. And they should be, right? Because this is your $20 bill right here. This is a $20 bill. And this is like, I don't know, a 10 and 2 5s. Same value, right? Same value, different look. Now we know we should be looking at them and being like, those are equivalent. Even though they look different, they are the same. Very good. Okay. So let's move on. Let's solve by factoring. Okay. So solve by factoring. I'm going to leave myself some room. Actually, let's move this up so I have more space right here. I didn't grab everybody. Sorry, I just want to move them up so that I have more space. Okay, so now I'm going to solve by graphing. Okay, so here goes solve by factoring, rather, not graphing. I'm going to solve by factoring. So I'm going to take this thing. I'm going to use Xbox on it, right? You guys remember Xbox? Yes. You guys remember this? Yes. Okay. This is kind of, I'm just going to say this is my favorite way, the gaming system. This is my favorite way just because it's my favorite way. So up here we put A times C, and on the bottom we put B. So A times C is going to be negative 15x squared, and the bottom is going to be negative 2x, right? So again, remember it's that question, what two things multiply to get to 15, but add to get to 2. So over here, I'm going to be factoring 15, 1 and 15, 2 and nothing, 3 and 5, 4 and nothing, and then 5 brings me back to this side. So I'm going to really encourage you to write out your factors. For those of you who are frustrated at factoring, it's probably because you're skipping this step and you're like, oh, I could just do this in my head. And it's fine if it's a number like 15, but it's a little bit when it's a number like 60, where there's a lot of factors. So which one of these sets gives you this? Negative 15x squared and negative 2x. Yeah, it's going to be 3 and 5. And then in order to get a negative 2x, someone has to be negative. So it must be the 5, right? And then so then we fill out our x box, right? These two guys go here. So 3x and negative 5x, right? And then our first term and our last term go here and here, right? So I'm kind of doing this quickly because this is a review, right? So we have x squared, and then that very first question we ask is, what's the biggest thing I could take out of x squared and 3x? And you guys would tell me what? Yeah, very good. X, very good. So x times what gives me x squared? X times what gives me x squared? Very good. X times what gives me 3x? X times what gives me 3x? Very good. Some of you are telling me my factors already. X plus 3 across the top. X times what gives me negative 5x. X times what? Very good. Minus 5. So there's my two factors. And then let me just make sure. Negative 5 times positive 3. Yeah, it's negative 15. Yay, right? So this last little step for us here is just going to be using that zero product property. I'm just going to move this out of my way real quick. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this and write x plus 3 times x minus 5 equals to 0. Does anybody remember what our next step is? Yeah, very good. Someone already told me in the chat. They knew that I was going to ask this. So you set each part equal to 0. So we get x plus 3 equals to 0 and x minus 5 equals to 0. Very good. So x equals negative 3 and 5, which is exactly what we got over here. Which is exactly what we got over here, right? So do you see how many times I could show you how to do this? Now, which way did you like better? Okay, so let's get some voting in the chat really quick. Which way did you like better? Did you like completing the square because you're very visual and you can imagine this guy? Or did you like factoring? Again, very visual because you can imagine the pieces. Which way did you like better? Nice. Okay, so some people are saying factoring, some people saying completing the square. I'm going to tell you an advantage. for completing the square. The advantage of completing the square is it works on every single quadratic, Factoring only works on quadratics that actually factor. Does that make sense? Yeah, there's quadratics out there that don't factor. So here's your review on completing the square. Here's your review on factoring. So now we're going to move on to factoring and quadratic formula. Now, again, so okay, someone in the chat said, wait, it kind of depends for me which one I'd use. So for me, it also depends. Like when I look at this, I can think instantly on what factoring is. I don't actually do all this. In my head, I can actually factor this and go straight to right here because I've been factoring for so long, right? This is my job. This is what I do, right? But sometimes some of you will get that good at it where you don't need to show me every single step. Okay, for factoring or for quadratic formula. Now for this one, I'm okay with doing either one of these because my numbers are smaller. Factoring is okay. So can you take a second to factor this and use the quadratic formula on this? So just it's gonna be a quick second. So go ahead and do that quickly. Okay, we're back. Solving by factoring. This one gets a little tricky. You know how I told you I can do certain factoring in my head? This is one of those ones that I can't because I have to keep track of too much. So I am going to start with my X and my box. So this is going to be 2x squared and this is going to be 3x. Oh, okay. Then this has to be 2x and x. Okay. So then this becomes 2x squared and this is 1 and this is 2x and x. So this is 2x. I'm going really fast, huh? Am I going too fast? Is this okay? You guys okay with this? So 2x times x is 2x squared, 2x times 1. And then x times what? Go get a drink of water, huh? So, okay. And then 2x plus 1, it gets me that, and 1 times 1 is 1. So this factors out. So here's me solving. So x plus 1 times 2x plus 1 equals to 0. Okay, did I do that too quickly? You guys are all okay. Okay, so if that was too quick, it's because you're not used to looking at factoring. So go back and practice factoring. Okay, there's a couple other things that you could do. Remember those videos as well. Okay, so now we're here and my computer has not caught up to you, who are all faster than my computer. Fantastic. Okay, but it does say x plus 1 times 2x plus 1 equals to 0. And this is that part where you separate it, right? And you set it equal to 0. So x plus 1 equals to 0 and 2x plus 1 equals to 0, right? So here x is equal to -1. Here, there's a little bit more math, so I'm going to take the time to actually solve it. -1. So that's 2x equals -1. So x equals to -1/2, right? So here's my answers. Again, I would use plugging in. I know, me too. I saw that too. Such a weirdo. So I saw this as someone said, I see this as a happy face. I'm like, I saw that. Okay, so here we go. I know, I just see things as like, I see this as a happy face too. This equals to 0, you see it? Okay, so use a couple of different ways that you can check it. You can check it by, some of your friends said, oh, just plug it in. And then some of your friends said, I really like Desmos to plug it in. Absolutely, use either of those methods to check your answer. But here we're going to use the quadratic formula. And I'm going to go on this side of my paper just so that I have a lot of room because, you know, Miss Johnson, she writes really big. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give me some lines because Miss Johnson, she writes correctly. Okay, so I'm going to use the quadratic formula, which is this. Remember, x is equal to -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so you are going to, number one, pick out what A, B, and C are, and then you just plug it in, right? Someone already gave me A, B, and C. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm going to snip it because I love when your voice is in our class and you're using it. So here is what someone says. Hey, Ms. Johnson, this is what I think A, B, and C are. See if you agree with them. I'm going to put it right here. So I think that's where it makes sense to put it, right? Up. So they said A is 2 because he's the guy in front of x squared. B is 3 because he's the guy in front of x. And C is 1 because, hello. Okay, so then Ms. Johnson likes to do this thing where she puts parentheses everywhere. It's very beneficial, especially when you have negatives as A, B, or C. Okay, so if I could copy and paste these guys like individually into here, I would definitely do that, right? So putting that parenthesis here, putting that parenthesis here, and then, oh man, it's catching up to us. Oh, there it goes. But then I'm just going to plug everybody in. So they want me to put B in this spot and this spot. So that's 3 and 3. So 3 here, 3 here. And then this one is A and then C. So A is 2, C is 1. A is 2, C is 1. And then A goes on the bottom. So that's just a 2. Let me see. Nice. Someone typed that in and labored and typed that into the chat. Thank you so much. That's exactly right. And then all we do is we ask ourselves, okay, is there anything that we can simplify? And we just simplify little by little. How do you type square root into Desmos? I will show you how to do it into the Desmos. Into the Desmos, you actually type SQRT like this. As soon as I hit the T, it disappears. So SQR, and then as soon as I put a T here, it becomes a square root, right? So I'll do it again, SQR and then T. Oop. And then if you want to, it also shows up here. If you're in Desmos, it's right here. But I know you guys are doing it on your Desmos slide, which doesn't have it. Very good. All right. So I'm going to start simplifying one thing at a time. So I see that I still, have this. So I see -3. So I'm going to simplify that -3. I see 3 squared. That's just 9. 4 times 2 is 8 times 1 is 8. So that's -8 divided by 4, right? And I keep thinking this, I don't know if your brain is doing this, but my brain is doing this, right? I already know what my answers are over here. How is this going to turn into that? All right. That's what I keep thinking. Like, how does this craziness, it looks crazy, turn into that? And you'll see it actually does, which is neat. So this is just 1. So we get -3 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 4. And someone just told me in the chat that the square root of 1 is 1. So here's my 2 answers. I get -3 plus 1 over 4 and -3 minus 1 over 4. Remembering that square root of 1 is 1. Okay. So let my computer catch up to you all. You are doing a fantastic job. My hope is that these 2 answers come out to be these 2 answers, right? If it's not, then I did something wrong, which, you know, I've shown you before. I make a ton of mistakes. And that's just part of the thing, is knowing that you know, that you've made a mistake and figuring out, oh, that's what I did wrong. So I'm just going to continue to simplify this. I'm hoping that it comes out to be the same. -3 plus 1 is -2. -2 over 4 equals to -1/2. And I'm like, yeah, it matches. Yay, right? And let me try this other one. So this other one is -3 minus 1 is -4 over 4 is -1. And I'm like, yeah, it matches. Now, if you ever do something and you do it 2 different ways, right? Like, for example, if I don't know, if you and your friend are going to meet at the park and your friend decides to ride there by bike and you decide to run over there, regardless of, you should still have the same answer of you guys being at the park, right? It shouldn't matter the method in which you get there. It just should matter that you guys got there. So yeah, it doesn't matter which method you use. And so for a test, I won't ever give you a quadratic and say you have to do it this way, but I will show, like, I don't know, maybe I'd do something like this. I'd show you this problem, and then I'd show you all this, and I'd say, which method did this student choose to use in solving this, right? And you guys would be like, oh, that's factoring, because look, there's the X, there's the box. And then I'd show you this work and I'd say, okay, well, what method did this person use to solve this? And they'd say, oh, quadratic formula. Okay. So moving right along, both of these questions gave you kind of nice answers, right? And again, I would check my answer using Desmos, plugging it back in. I would use another method to check it. Okay, I wanted to get to this problem here because this problem gives us a little bit of a different answer. And then I also wanted to show you this and what it means. Okay, so we're going to do these two problems and make sure that you guys are all set for your homework. So this one says by completing the square. Let's see, could you guys start with this one really quick? Can you go ahead and start this one? What would you rather start with, quadratic formula or completing the square? Which one would you rather start? Which one would you prefer, completing the square or quadratic formula? Okay, so go ahead and start with quadratic formula. Oh wait, actually, I'm going to let you guys choose. I need some of you to start with quadratic formula and some of you to start with completing the square. Once you're done, switch and do the other one. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And I want you to be able to look at both of them and see how they relate to this last question. This last question is important. Can this equation be solved by factoring? Okay, because Ms. Johnson's favorite way is factoring, right? And so if you all are going to be able to tell me about this question in a little bit. Okay, so give yourself a couple minutes to start this. We'll be right back. So again, one of the ways that you're going to get better at this is if you just practice, right? So I'm going to complete the square first, because I'll be honest with you, completing the square as a student was my least favorite way, because it felt like there were all these steps. But after looking at like how I do this here, the way I do it here, there's so little steps. But the way I was doing it as a student without this picture made it a lot of steps, by the way. All right, so I'm going to draw a quick little drawing. I'm not even going to pull out my squares there. I'm going to go, here's my square, and then 4 would be 2 here and 2 here, so there would be 4 here, right? All right, so then how long is this side and how long is this side? How long is this side right here? Yeah, x plus 2, very good. And then this side is x plus 2. Yeah, I know. Some people, you guys type so fast, sometimes you make a little mistake. I get it. So I'm going to rewrite this. So I write x plus 2 quantity squared is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 4. So this is me writing this out. And then I write this guy right underneath it. So x squared plus 4x minus 8. And I say, hey, how do I get from here to here? Now, if you notice, sorry, let me let my annotation catch up to my voice here. So I write the problem right under it and I say, how do I get from here to here? And if you notice, the x squareds match, the 4x's match. I just need this to match. So I usually will add or subtract some number to get from 4 to -8. And you guys already told me, very good, it's -12. So I'm basically going to subtract 12 on each side, right? I'm going to stick a little -12 in there. So I get -12. And then I keep this x plus 2 quantity squared business. So now these are the same. Again, this is my $20 bill. And this guy over here is like a 5 and 15 ones. Same value, different look. Okay, so now that I have this rewritten better, I'm going to solve it and set it equal to 0. So I go x plus 2 squared minus 12 equals to 0. And what would I do first? What would I do first? Yeah, very good. So I'd add 12 to both sides. So I get x plus 2 quantity squared equals to 12. Again, What do I do next? What is this next step going to be? How do I get rid of that squared? Everybody says, yes, I square root, but don't forget the what, Miss Johnson. Miss Johnson, don't forget the what. What should we? Yes, the plus and minus. Awesome work. I am so proud of the way you guys are learning this. Very proud. Okay, so x plus 2 equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 12. And some of you are like, Miss Johnson, I don't know the square root of 12. For right now, that's okay. Just leave them alone. Okay, just some of you are like, Miss Johnson, I don't know what the square root of 12 is. Very good. That's okay. Don't worry. Right? Earlier, we had a nice and perfect square. It was the square root of 16. But over here, we have the square root of 12, which is not a perfect square. Okay, so then I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Do not bring this tendency that some of my students do, and they're like, oh, let me just add it to the square root. No, right? These numbers here outside the square root do not get to play with the numbers inside the square root, okay? They're separated for a reason. So our final answer is x is equal to -2 plus or minus the square root of 12, okay? Just a little side note, you can simplify the square root of 12 like this. What times what gives me 12? What times what gives me 12? Any number. Very good. 2 times 6, someone said. Very good. Okay. So, and yeah, you could have chosen 3 times 4. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to go 2 times 6. Okay. I always do that. It's still not working. All right. I'm going to be patient. Oh, there it goes. So then I'm going to break 6 down into 3 times 2. Now with square roots, because there's a tiny little 2 right here, tiny little 2, I'm looking for pairs of stuff. Okay. So does anybody see a pair at the end? Does anybody see a pair of something at the end? Anybody see a pair of something at the end here, right here? Very good. Yeah, you see a pair of 2s. So one pair of 2s gets to come outside as a 2. The tiny 2, oh, it's just, that's what a square root is. That's why we call it a square root. The tiny 2 is because it is actually invisible. So if you think about a cube root, we actually write the cube root right there. So like if I was looking for the cube root of 27, I'd actually write a 3 there. The square root has a tiny little 2 and it's invisible. So very good. Good questions. So the 2s, the pair of 2s comes on the outside, and then the 3 goes on the inside, and it stays on the inside. Essentially, this says it's the square root of 4 times the square root of 3, which is the square root of 12. So that's also known as 2 root 3. Don't think about 2 root 3 as being any like a freakish number. It's not. It's just 2 times root 3. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to do the quadratic formula. You all know how to do it. But I want to get to this question, which says, can this equation be solved by factoring? And you look at this answer. Look at this answer right here. Okay, which I'm going to simplify to -2 plus or minus the square root, plus or minus 2 square root of 3. Do you think you could do this kind of work and have an answer come out like this? Do you think you can factor and have an answer come out like this? Everyone says no. Very good. No. How come? What here says you can't be factored? What here in the answer tells me here and says, hey, quadratic, you are not factorable? What here in the answer? Very good. That square root symbol being left in the answer does not allow me to be, this means that this one can't be factored. And some of you are like, but Ms. Johnson, this one had a square root and we factored it, but the square root simplified to just 1, right? The square root up here simplified to 4. So that's why we were able to factor it. Does that make sense on why we couldn't factor this one? Awesome work. Very good work today. Thank you so much.